Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tuesday. The S&P 500 was down about 0.4% today. Obviously, this is the last day of the year. We've had four down days in a row, unfortunately, to end the year. But let's talk a little bit about this year because it was really fantastic, even with these last 4 days. We've got 23% gain in the S&P 500, which is incredible. Even eked out a gain in the Vanguard Total Bond Market Index, which is what I use as a proxy for the overall bond market. That was up 1.5%, including dividends. Obviously, the stock market has been the place to go versus the bond market. That could change. We'll see how this plays out. Of course, over the last 2 years now, we have a 50% gain, which is just incredible. Lots of momentum. We're still in a primary up direction market right now, which I think is really important. We got a lot of things coming at us next year that we're going to have as kind of distractions. The tariffs, the deportations, the tax cuts, and how do the tax cuts go? Because sometimes the bond market has a big say on that too. If you cut taxes and you don't have any cuts in spending, the bond market has to be the place where we get that deficit money from. And so that can raise interest rates and what have you, and that can create problems for the stock market. So we'll see how that goes. However, the stock market is the stock market, and it has huge momentum right now. It's going to be difficult to really turn that around, especially when there are some pieces that could come into play that the market would actually really like. For example, when you cut regulations and you cut taxes, that increases earnings potentially. So and that stimulates the economy some, and again, I think that's why they're thinking about maybe not raising rates, cutting rates as much, because there's a lot of things that are potentially stimulating to the economy here too. So very fascinating how this will all play out, but the market is based on earnings, and I don't see what's happening in Congress is dramatically impacting earnings across the board. Obviously there's certain companies and certain situations where that might not be true, but when you look at the broad economy, which is what we look at, because we're buying these broad indexes that represent, the companies that across the board, the S&P 500, the Vanguard Total Stock Market Index, or what have you. That I still think that there's some great potential there for that to continue to do well. So, but we have to watch and see what's going to happen. How does the market react to all of these different things? We have a debt ceiling coming up. The debt ceiling has been very interesting in the sense that the first time they had the big argument about it, it dropped 17%. I think the last time we had it was down to 3%, and it keeps getting to be less and less, just because there's a lot of rhetoric and a lot of things that are happening up until the last minute, but then they always end up doing it anyway. So the market is now kind of expecting that. So hopefully that does happen, and we keep things going in that regard. So those distractions aside, that will cause volatility. The market still has a great potential here to do well because earnings have a great potential to continue to do well next year. I don't see anything really in the way of earnings next year. We're not heading for a recession. We could see some inflationary pressures where they start to raise interest rates, which would create some problems for the market in the short term. But I don't see it happening with earnings. And ultimately, earnings are what drive the market. It's one of the strongest correlations you can find long term is the growth in earnings equaling kind of the growth in the stock market as a whole. So I think that we're going to be okay as far as that goes. Could be plenty of volatility, lots of question marks. But we've just had 2 great years. I wouldn't be surprised to see, at least a decent year here in the third year. That is the typical pattern that the third year is at least positive on these types of scenarios. But, who knows what will happen as far as that goes. But I want to thank everybody for watching my videos all year long and the shows and what have you. Really appreciate that. Love the feedback and such too. So have a great New Year's Eve, and we will see you next year. Thank you.